Hi, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for
Hey.
coming. My name is Max Wolf, and I'm the Public Policy Manager at the Charles River Chamber. We're happy to bring to you a conversation with the three candidates running for two seats on the Wellesley Select Board. Today, you'll hear from incumbents Beth Selwood Woods and Tom Ohlfelder, as well as challenger and current Planning Board member Mark Charney. All three candidates will be on the ballot in next week's election. As for the parameters, this will be a 1 hour debate. No opening statement, but each candidate will have 90 seconds to complete a closing one. Other than that closing statement, we will not be using a timer, but I do ask that each candidate be respectful of each other's time, keep their answers concise, and focus on the questions that are asked. And I do reserve the right to interrupt and probably will do so in the interest of time. Finally, I did let the candidates know the last question of today's debate, which will be if you could time travel to any one day in world history just to observe, but not to change a thing, which day would you choose and why? So let's get into it. Unlike some communities, Wellesley has a long tradition of maintaining the same tax rate for both residential and commercial properties. The question to the candidates is, would you pledge to maintain this level rate? And additionally, what other ideas do you have for helping Wellesley businesses? Let's start with Mark on this one.
Thank you so much to the chamber for having us, and thanks for the question. Yes, I would pledge to keep that level rate. I believe that what separates Wellesley from other towns is that we've been consistent with treating our businesses and the interests in our town um, in a positive way. And I think having that flat tax rate helps with that. I'm a big advocate for supporting our local businesses. I have my own local business here in town, and so it's an area that means a lot to me. Um, in terms of the development ideas that are happening or that are in the process of taking shape in Wellesley, I support the idea of making sure that we don't fill our town up with more banks. Not that I have any problem with banks, but that I think we need more local businesses and ways to do that. We'll talk more about in this session, but it's an area that I would strongly support advocating for.
Thank you, Mark. Over to Tom.
There's no question that the only outcome should be a single tax rate. Every year when we go through the tax hearing, the mathematics are absolutely clear that there is no real benefit to a dual tax rate. And so we have voted, I certainly have voted consistently over 9 years to maintain a single tax rate. It would be overly burdensome on businesses and of marginal benefit to homeowners. I don't take lightly the fact that every dollar saved in taxes is meaningful to a family, but it would be disproportionately burdensome to the businesses when they need help. With regard to the businesses itself, I think there is certainly more that we can be doing. One of the first things that we've done during my time on the board is to make fundamental changes in the alcohol regulations. And it's led to an absolute explosion of excellent restaurants in town. It used to be that if you wanted to see your friends on a Friday night, you went to dinner at Needham. That's changed and turned around. Needham has wonderful restaurants, but so do we now. And it's a gathering place, and people are very positively responsive to the changes that we've made. But I also think there's more that we can do. I don't agree with the fact that the commercial property owner has taken the Central Street parking lot and charges $25 an hour unless you have validated parking there. What good is that to the businesses that want walk-ins, that want browsers, that want people who are exploring what they have to offer? That dampens frequency of visits to these businesses. I don't agree with street diets and the elimination of parking spots. I think we ought to be doing more about simplifying regulations for grease traps. We have a burden of tens of thousands of dollars on new restaurants and food service businesses that could be simplified. We need to be doing something about this. We need to be making it possible that businesses don't start out with 50, 60, 80, $90,000 worth of expenses for grease traps that benefit, frankly, the commercial property owner after that lessee moves on. I think we need to be doing much more in terms of the streetscape design that the select board has under consideration.
Thank you, Tom. And we'll kick that same question over to Beth.
So I believe, as most people know, I am very passionate about our small businesses. I've spent a lot of time and energy over the years. Not only do I shop local, I support our local businesses through any and all methods that I can help them organize, create community, and celebrate their presence. I the math is simple. A single tax rate is the only tax rate that makes sense. We do not have the large industrial base that makes a dual tax rate even something one would consider. So I cannot imagine shifting from a single tax rate. So I hope that counts as a pledge, Max. In terms of things to be done, I strongly advocated for the change in alcohol practices. The business landscape is changing. One of the very special things about our town is that you can get your business done in town. You can go out to a restaurant, you can shop, you can get the birthday present, you can get your fashion things and your banking and whatever. And we need to protect that aspect of our town. The landlords, I think we need to work harder with our landlords to help us make the town more inviting and have the businesses that are their tenants feel more supported. I think we need to work as a town to support our businesses better. The streetscape renovation project was approved by town meeting 2 years ago. It has not come forward yet, and we need to invest in our downtown district. It needs beautification. It does not need a street diet. It does not need a loss of parking. It needs us to focus on the parking we as a town offer. The parking spot lot that Tom mentioned, that is paid for by the merchants in that block. We need to help people understand where they park for certain businesses. And we need to look more aggressively at what the town offers in terms of parking resources for the employees of the businesses and the owners of the businesses so that they are incented not to take the spots in front of the stores. And the last thing, Max, I see your hand, is we need to support activities that bring new people to shop and support our downtown.
And really quickly on that lot you guys are talking about, Tom, is there any way the select board could, remedy that situation? And Mark, do you agree that the lot should be open to just those businesses or open to all the Wellesley Square businesses? So let's start with Tom, and then I want to hear Mark's opinion as well.
The select board power in this regard is very limited. It's private property and they can make these decisions. But I don't think that that means that we abdicate our influence within the business community in town to at least engage in a conversation. I understand, I think, what their reasoning is. I think they were concerned that they were filling that lot with people who were not going into the businesses. I think there are better ways of doing it than charging Newbury Street rates when we're trying to develop and support businesses in the Central Street area. We have 5 or 6 empty storefronts. We shouldn't have that in our central business district. So I think we need to engage the owner of that lot. We need to have conversations about why they're doing it. We need to participate collaboratively on whether there are better solutions than $25 an hour.
And Mark, to you.
Yeah, I
Would you
mean,
like to hear that lot?
it's a private parking lot, and so it's really the responsibility of the select board to find out how to make that situation better. You
But do
know,
you want to make that situation better, or do you think what they've
well,
done is reasonable?
I think that I'm pretty sure that the select board sort of canceled having a liaison to the business community a few years ago, and I wonder why they would do that. These are the kind of having that liaison relationship to me would make solving or discussing this kind of an issue much more a reality. And so, to me, as a small business owner myself, on the select board, I would make a strong pledge to the local business community to be very engaged, not just through talking about solving problems, but actually solving them. I mean, I haven't been on the select board for 9 years, so I don't have I can't say that I, you know, necessarily have had anything to do to change it, but that's exactly what my pledge would be. Um,
And Beth, I think you maybe were that liaison
I
at one point.
was
Maybe
that
I'm wrong.
liaison, and
I'm,
the
are you
business
interested in that reviving that role?
I have kept working that role despite not being the designated person. The businesses, the chamber, I think many of us knew that the businesses should not be on an island without representation from the elected officials. Several of our businesses are also residents, and our residents benefit from a vibrant business community. It was a decision I thought that was short-sighted and not well-grounded. You know, without the role I have continued doing at Max, the the businesses, the business composition downtown has changed. There are different parking requirements now. There's longer duration parking requirements. You can't do anything about the fact our downtown is next to the train station where people commute to work. You need to have some form of parking, but we haven't done the best job we could do, and we need to lean in.
And Tom, I'm interested. Do you think that liaison is something that the select board should have? Do you support that?
I don't feel that we need a designated liaison. In fact, what I think is that we have worked to create a stronger relationship between the merchants, the business owners, and the select board office. Corey Testa is the assistant executive director with significant experience in the legislature, has done a remarkable job with that relationship. Kay Meager in our office is responsible for helping these businesses directly. What really matters is that the businesses are able to be up and running in an efficient, cost-effective way through a regulatory environment. And the best people to do that are Corey and Kay and the office staff generally. And that's what we have fostered. In the meantime, Beth has continued to work with the businesses. The individual select board members shop in all of these stores. I certainly talk to the merchants. I take that information back to the select board office. So there's no lack of support for the businesses, and we certainly have a significant interest in their success.
Okay, I'm gonna give anyone a chance to respond if they want, but if not, I
Yeah,
will
I mean,
move on to
I
the next
guess I would
question.
just say, Max, that leadership, in my opinion, from the select board, comes from the top down. So it's important that having a liaison who's a member of the community, a member of the board, is critical to telegraphing and showing the support for the businesses. I respect the experience and work that Corey has and his vested interest in supporting our local businesses as with other staff members. But I think having uh, one of the elected officials be held, having that role is critical. So to me, I would revive that very, very quickly if I'm elected.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move on. A little bit of a hypothetical question right here. If you could add one new public service or amenity to Wellesley with unlimited funding, what would it be? So, I mean, not an easy question, but let's start with Tom on this one. So, unlimited funding, a new public service, what would you want to add to Wellesley?
I think what I would add, and we've been looking at this, is a venue for arts and entertainment. I think one of the critical ways to draw people into Wellesley and to create foot traffic into the businesses is to have something besides businesses and restaurants to draw people in. The ability for people to come enjoy an art gallery exhibit, to enjoy the Wellesley Symphony Orchestra, to enjoy a play or some other production is one of the best ways to create conversation, energy, and excitement in Wellesley. The library does a wonderful job in terms of the uh, art exhibits that they have. People talk about that, but I think we need to do that. We have the Wellesley Theater Project in the community center. I think we need to be looking, and we have asked Beth to do this, and Corey is working with her on this. We need to be looking at an arts and entertainment center. We have felt strongly about that, and that effort is underway.
Thank you. Same question to Beth.
So, limited funding being the operative part of your question, Max? I
Yeah.
would say we need,
Unlimited funding.
oh, we have unlimited funding?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. So I would like to revive Playhouse Square and make it a public arts center where we had theater productions, music productions, gallery, and let's see, movie, all kind performances of all types, right in the center of town at Playhouse Square. The building is fairly empty. It's set up that the rake, the floor is underneath there. And so if I had unlimited funding, I would have the town lease that building and help the arts community set up a nonprofit where we could run year-round performances and entertainment and resources for this community.
Thank you. And Mark?
Um, so it's an interesting question because it goes back to some policy issues that I sort of think about, and that's town hall. I believe town hall is like one of the most iconic, buildings in our town, and I have thought a lot about, what we use it for, and essentially it's an office building now. And I would have approached this a completely different way. So if it were up to me, I would have the town hall be our central community center where we could have all of this art activity come out of that building. And I would, again, unlimited money. I would purchase the 40 Grove Street from Jumbo Capital and move the town hall offices there. But I would turn the town hall into the community center that it should have been. Because right now it's an amazing building. It was a great renovation, but it's not being used because half the staff don't even, occupy that building anymore. And it's people who go there, I guess, are going to pay a parking ticket or maybe ask a question about the assessor's office. But that building is such an iconic building, and the land around it ought to be used more for the community. I think of like a holiday market that occurs around that building where we have ice sculptures and skating, and that we're bringing the community, not only members of Wellesley, but members from outside the community into Wellesley for that whole holiday season. I spent This year I was in Vienna, Austria for they have these Christmas markets there that are like these unbelievably hugely successful events where people from all over the world come and they buy little tchotchkes and drink and whatever, and it's wonderful, and I could just see that us having that here in town at the town hall. So that would be my my approach, but obviously it's unlimited money, which we don't have. Good question.
Yeah, definitely a hypothetical question, and interesting to hear that a lot of similar answers on that one. So definitely need some sort of art center in town. Um, Now let's talk about Mass Bay. I think we all knew we were going to talk about this. If the audience does not know, the state is looking to redevelop Mass Bay's parking lot into 180 units of housing, and using the sale of that land to fund some much needed work on Mass Bay's campus. And they're doing this under a new state law that circumvents some of the town's usual processes. Um, However, they've committed to focusing that development on the parking lot and not the forest. My first question to you all is, do you believe the state is sincere when it says they're willing to save the Mass Bay Forest? Let's start with Beth here.
Are you asking me if I question the integrity of the state?
Do you
Is
believe
that
they're sincere when they say when they say they want to save the forest and they are going to save the
so,
forest?
Max? I don't think there is a person in this state, and I maybe more broadly, that does not want to save forests. I don't know anyone that doesn't
But
want to save a
of
forest. So
course
I
they don't
believe
want to, but will they?
I believe the state supports saving the forest, and the conundrum they're in is that they want to use the forest land as part of their equation in computing density on the parking lot. That's what I believe.
Thank you. And Tom, do you believe they're being sincere?
I'm an attorney. What I believe is what we are able to negotiate, reduce to writing, and sign. And the difficulty with this question is that, for one thing, we have Ed Augustus leaving and the new secretary coming in. We don't know what the relationship is between the new person taking his place and the governor as to what the directive is going to be. And we have had a significant difference between what we were told by the mid-level boots on the ground staff who would be on the job site and the secretary and the commissioner at DCAM. So it's very difficult to know what to believe, quite frankly, without even alleging that anybody's being disingenuous. We just have not had a focused response. I think we need to wait for the answers to the questions that we asked all of them. That's going to be more telling in terms of their commitment and the direction that they might go in. But they've been very clever at sort of holding back, asserting that they can develop 4 units per acre based on the entire 45, but saying, oh, wait a minute, we don't really mean that we're ever going to cut any of the forest down. Nothing is in writing, nothing's been agreed to. We don't even have a level playing field on which to negotiate because we don't have a set of common ground rules.
Mark, do you agree with that we can't take the state's exact word on that right now? That assertion that they will save the forest?
Well, I mean, they haven't said, they said they were, last I heard there was going to be most of the forest would be preserved. I think they said, so I don't know if they haven't committed to saying one thing or another. They haven't said it's just these 4.5 acres, these 5 acres. I believe that they said they were most of the forest because they don't really have a plan for this development. Like they don't know exactly if they can do everything on the 5 acres, if they need to bleed into some of the acreage that is at the lower end of the forest. So I think the issue here is that, like any negotiation, unless you have it in writing, um, you know, this is a political issue. So politically, it's being said that they want to save the forest, which I think is a great thing because I think we all want to save that forest.
I just want to say, I mean, in the Boston Globe article about this issue, Ed Augustus committed to focusing development on that parking lot and not touching the forest.
Yeah, but Ed
Um,
Augustus isn't there anymore.
Ed Augustus and the state. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's parts and parcel. So I'm
Yeah.
interested
I
to
mean, I prefer
realize
to
that
see
not
like,
all of
yeah.
you believe exactly where they're going with on that.
I mean,
Um,
unless it's in writing, Max, like, written by Ed Augustus or the governor, that would to me would be like the clearest answer.
and so, do you think this is for everyone? Do you think it's time to reschedule the town's visioning process? Um, it's hearing that some of you might think the forest will be saved, some of you might not. When is it time to reschedule that process, and why not working collaboratively with the state is the best option? Let's go to Beth on this one. Why not work collaboratively?
So I'm going to take the first part of your question, Max. Is it
Yeah.
time to have a visioning process? From the beginning, I have said we, the select board, need to speak directly with our residents and talk about the issues, talk about what works and what doesn't work so that we, as their elected officials, are empowered to represent them with facts, what they believe, why they believe, what their reaction is to different options. And I think we should not be fearful about talking to them, even absent a firm commitment from the state about where they are, because we are better informed representatives having dialogues in open with our community. And
So,
so,
are you
yes,
willing to
I would have
reschedule it?
held, I would have held, if you watched our programming, I have been a strong advocate of holding forums. Does it need to be a quote visioning where we have baked solutions to get feedback on? I don't believe we're there yet. I believe we should be having workshops and talking through the issues, talking through why we think no development works, why we think some development works, what our concerns are, what our non-negotiables are, and move from there. But we have allowed our residents to give feedback to Mass Bay. We've allowed our residents to come in one-way street with us at Citizen Speak, but we have not been in forums where there's a give and take with those of us whom they elect.
And Mark,
So I agree
do you
with Beth
think
on
we need
that.
to shut out the state here, or
No,
should
I
we
mean,
be talking with the
no,
state right now? Because
no,
it
no.
doesn't
So,
seem like there's a lot of
so here's the
dialogue.
thing, Max. Here's the thing, Max. There was a rush by the select board to to put this visioning session together. They bypassed town meeting to authorize the funding of it. They even asked me as the chair of the planning board to contribute to it. And they rushed this along because they, oh, we have to do this. And then all of a sudden, at the last minute, the day before Christmas, they can't, the day before Thanksgiving, they canceled it. The select board did.
Mhm.
Why? Politically inconvenient. So, in my opinion, like I think that of course we need to be thinking about how to solve this problem. But right now, the way the select board has kind of managed this has been pretty poor, in my opinion, and it's not sending the right message to the state. Um,
But
I
would you be
oppose
talking
this.
to the
I
state
mean,
right
I
now?
oppose,
Because
like
there's not a lot of dialogue here.
I've said this before. I oppose development in the forest, and I oppose development on the 5 acre parking lot. Stop. Full stop.
Okay, we'll get to the parking lot
Yeah, sure.
soon. Tom, do you think we should be shutting out communication with the state right now until we get more firm commitments? Why haven't we been talking to them the whole time, and why not work
We're
collaboratively?
not, Max, we're not shutting out communication with the state. I'm not sure where you get that impression. We are awaiting answers on the questions that we sent them. Those questions are reasonable. They are quite clear. They're important. We what Mark seems to fail to understand is that the state has the power to move forward with an RFP, and they can pull the trigger on the timing. That was one of the reasons we negotiated the ability to hold the visioning session when we did, in the face of the state not having to agree to that, not having to agree to extending the time limit. We were working under conditions where the state held the power in terms of whether they were going to give us the time to have a visioning session with the public. One of the reasons why we canceled it is because the select board absolutely cannot be in a position where we make representations to the community about where we're looking for input. We can't go to them and say, we want your vision on 180 units on the parking lot, only to have the state, where there'd been no agreement, come back and say, well, we changed our mind, we now need 300 units. That completely damages the select board credibility and the ability to control this process. So no, it's not time to reschedule that yet. It was appropriate to schedule that session before, and I don't think that we can do so until we have answers to the questions that we submitted to the state. There is an absolute ongoing willingness to communicate between the parties.
So let's move on to the parking lot here. So the state has said they're not going to budge on 180 units, and I mean, I've heard them commit to not going above 180 units too, but it seems like not everyone believes every word the state says. Why aren't these units important in these homes important to Wellesley? Right now, there's a exodus of young professionals from the town and projected to be more. Um, and Mark, you said you oppose any development of the parking lot. Um, would these homes not be beneficial to the town and its workforce?
So I think it's clear. I mean, like I've been involved in housing my whole career. I have nothing, housing is an important part of any economic growth and development. The issue here is that 180 units on a parking lot that's completely used by the college with no plan, no thought out plan on how this is all going to work doesn't make any sense to me. We have a ton of opportunities in town for housing. We have a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of housing that is in the works. We have Barton Road right now, which is a 14-acre parcel of land that is highly undeveloped. Adjoining that is the Armory that is a 7 acre lot. Um, that's an area where we have a lot of opportunities, and we should be working with the state on that. Now, I do not think for this location it makes any sense, period. And there's no plan. There's no plan. This was just a program that was passed by the state.
And Mark, yeah, if I can interrupt,
Yeah.
do you So do you recognize that the town needs more small homes and apartments? And um, right now it's a parking lot, and Mass Bay has said, they own the whole other side of the street, and there's land there. They can figure out parking. Um, why is this not a good opportunity
Let's see the plan.
to
Let's
solve the
see the full
problem?
plan. Let's see the full plan all ironed out. There's an issue of traffic, a major traffic problem right now on Oakland Street for all the residents that live there. Where's the plan to address that in relation to the college? There's 5,000 students that go there every day. They come and go. So
Mhm.
where's the plan? I'd like to see the plan for Mass Bay. Not,
Um,
not the state coming along and just jamming this down because we're trying to fix a state problem. Wellesley is participating in that. We have MBTA communities that we passed. We have, like I said, there's a bunch of parcels that have just traded hands. There's a project coming right now on 888 Worcester Street. We have things going on that are going to affect and move the needle on housing in our town. No question about it.
Thank you, Mark. And Beth, in terms of a plan, the town has its own housing plan that came out last fall, showing that we're desperately losing young professionals, and we've already lost 3,000 of them this decade, and the town is aging. Um, do you think this parking lot is fit for development, and why is it not a good candidate if you don't think so?
So, Max, first of all, I'd like to correct your statement that that plan was not accepted as a plan. It was
It's
um,
a study, a
it
study.
was
How about that?
looked as a playbook for how to use it as a resource for when you are developing housing. And I think it is really unfair of the chamber to say Wellesley's not helping the housing crisis. Wellesley has passed MBTA communities at a rate higher than was required. We met our 10%. We have put on more than 500 units in the last 5 years. And the idea that these units are automatically affordable is absolutely, I don't know what kind of thinking that is. We can't count on what those will be. It's units. It's not size of the unit. It's not cost of the unit. The state doesn't even require that they be affordable units. So the specter that the town is turning away affordable units is inappropriate. The town has embraced development. The town has looked at development in places where it makes sense. We've tried to craft developments so that they support our neighborhoods and they support our town. And you can't go spot by spot and say, let's put as much as we can on each spot without understanding it. And the last thing I'll say is that's why visioning is so important. None of us three candidates live near Mass Bay. I live the closest, but I'm on the other side of Route 9. If you don't understand the traffic there, you don't understand the dynamics of that neighborhood, you can't sit in an office and decide they can bear the burden of that many units.
So Beth, if you think the town has embraced housing, um, and you said, this is not the right spot, where is the right spot to put more housing?
So, Max, we agreed as a town and we voted it that housing along our main corridor makes sense 17 units an acre, right? It's zoned. Look at the MBTA communities. We've identified that. We have commercial and industrial areas that are zoned for 17 unit an acre density. We have many units coming up. Mark alluded to 888 Worcester. We have 592 Washington Street. We have Walnut Street coming up. We have all of the Haynes parcels. I believe there's 11 acres in Lower Falls. We have other projects that the town has been given some alerts to. We have the Taylor block downtown. So we are looking at a lot of shifts in housing density, numbers of units, and size of population.
Thank you. Tom, I'm going to let you respond to this conversation, but if you think the town has embraced housing, and some of you at least seem to, um, I want to go back to that study, we'll call it the strategic housing study, where they said that we're going to lose 9 of our population under 20 by 2050. I'm wondering how you think we can reverse that, as well as your response to this conversation, Tom.
If I understood what you just said, it's we're going to lose 9% of our population under 20. Is that what
Yes.
you just said?
Mhm.
Why would you expect anything else? We're a well-educated community. I would certainly hope that my four children left and went on to college. So at 20 years old, why would you think they would be staying here? We have an increasing population. More recently, we've had to add another precinct based on the federal requirements because of the total population in Wellesley. So I don't quite understand. I think it's faulty logic that you're applying to this particular question, but
Are you saying we shouldn't attract more young families? I mean, it seems like
I don't believe
young families are
20-year-olds.
being priced out. Would you agree with that or no?
Well, wait a minute now, you're being inconsistent. I don't believe that 20-year-olds are the demographic for young families. You're confusing a few things here in the position that you're taking.
But their kids are under 20.
What's important to me, Max, my job and the oath of office that I took is to represent the residents and business interests in the community. And so my feeling is we have a warrant article from the planning board for a new comprehensive plan. That's a very important task moving forward because the new comprehensive plan is what will begin to engage the community and help us understand where housing should be built with community support. We're a dense, built out community. And what is right in terms of housing opportunities in Brookline or Cambridge or Springfield or Boston are very different than what's right for our community here. Both of the other candidates have addressed infrastructure issues. And I would certainly say that the infrastructure around the Mass Bay site is a terrible location, unsupported by the state, by the way, who have made it clear that mitigation is not their responsibility. Who else is going to call Mass DOT and instruct them to help us with the traffic flow and roadway configuration in the Oakland Street area? That simply isn't an appropriate location for dense multifamily housing. One of the thoughts that I've had for a number of years is that if we can find another location for an arts and entertainment center, that leaves open the ability to acquire the land at the Wellesley Community Center where we could build a friendly 40B and build more dense housing and control the price point. Mass DOT said a number of years ago that they would assist with a left-hand turn off of Route 16 East into that property. We have more creative, better ways for approaching housing than jamming it into a site with inappropriate, insufficient infrastructure.
So, thank you, Tom. And so we've all, or Tom talked about the comprehensive plan. We talked a little bit about the strategic housing plan, which was not accepted by the Select and Planning Board. It was only the acknowledged receipt of. Mark, you voted against acknowledging the receipt of, if I'm correct.
I did.
Um,
I did.
can you explain that and why do you think that plan shouldn't be adopted?
So, what I said in my comments the night of the vote was that the data, the contents of the report will be used in a master plan, just like every other area study that we've done. What I didn't agree with is that I felt like the driving forces that caused us to do that or that brought that forward was political, and then I believe it was used politically in the last few town meetings, whether you were for Rio or against Rio, it was used politically. And I felt like the contents of the report didn't address what was asked by the town in doing it. And so I definitely voted against adopting it. I know that one of my competitors in this race didn't vote against it. And so yeah, I also just want to mention that I've been promoting this comprehensive plan, and I've been getting pushback from the select board to fund it. We asked for $400,000, and if you look at some of the hearings that they had talking about this, I believe again one of the candidates for this race was saying, I don't think we should, maybe we should postpone this. We don't have a planning director yet. We should kick this down the road. This is an issue that the town needs. We're
Thank
we're,
you.
we're overdue on it. We're supposed to do it every 10 years. And I wanted to make sure as the chair of the planning board that it was properly funded to do it.
Thank you, Mark. So, Tom and Beth, I'm interested in where you voted to acknowledge receipt or not of this housing study that was commissioned by the town. We'll start with Tom.
I voted to acknowledge receipt and thank you for the way you framed that question. It's my position and has been that we received that report, it was duly completed, but it is not something that we can implement at this time. That report requires the completion of the new comprehensive plan first. The comprehensive plan is what's going to allow us to engage the community at large so that we can understand who we're representing and what type of housing we ought to be targeting. The strategic housing plan then provides assistance and mechanisms for implementing what we determine to be appropriate housing through the comprehensive plan. So the order is backwards. But at the same time, I do acknowledge the receipt of that particular plan. I think that was appropriate.
And Beth?
I did not acknowledge the report because I didn't think it was completed in a way that was actionable. A strategic plan should always have a goal and should have a rationale for that goal. And the plan did not have a goal. So it looked at development of housing without, in a very narrow framework. It didn't look at the impact on the community. It didn't look at the impact on the infrastructure. It didn't look at the impact on the finances of the town and how the town should, in a measured way, look at phasing in and adjusting its housing inventory. It didn't look at controlling housing prices. It didn't look at protecting starter homes. It didn't look at the things we hear from people. So if you look at our housing inventory, it has gone up. The average price and the accessibility of lower price points it's a disappearing, Max. So I didn't think the plan did set a goal. And so I couldn't buy into that. I'm a strategic planner. You can't do a strategy without a goal.
Okay, we're going to move on from housing. I just do want to say, from the chamber's perspective, we view that housing plan as a real reason why we think 180 units on Mass Bay is going to be helpful to the town. It shows that we're struggling to retain workers, we're struggling to retain young professionals, and we think that data can really informs the desperate need for housing, and this Mass Bay
So
site
Max,
is a great opportunity for that.
Max,
And you're welcome to respond to that.
no,
Mike.
I will respond to that because I think what I was alluding to was that report, by acknowledging that report, it's like you're sort of weaponizing it to sort of promote housing in a way that was like, and that's what it was used.
Don't
If
we
you
want to
look,
promote housing?
no, but if you look at the arguments that were made on the floor of town meeting, to decide one thing or not. It was all we need to wait for this report. We need to wait for the study. You know what I mean? It was like it was used as a political tool, and that to me is the opposite of what we want. You know, um, you know,
I, I just want to say, Mark, I appreciate the sentiment. We're going to move on, but I think in the end, the data speaks for itself, and I think we're talking a lot about the politics of the plan, but I want to focus on what it showed, that we're desperately shedding young professionals, in that we're unattainable for a lot of the workers that live there. Even nurses, healthcare workers, even financial services workers cannot live in Wellesley anymore.
Max, keep one thing in mind that the town of Wellesley adopted an inclusionary housing. And that's our policy. Okay. And the planning board, we institute that on every project.
Okay. I'm going to let anyone else quickly respond if they want, but we're going to move on.
So, Max, the plan did not provide guidance about how to make that town more affordable for younger families. And I have to agree with Tom. 20 years old is not. At 20, did you want to move to Wellesley?
I think it was
At
saying that
20,
the
you
young
want to live.
families who have young kids, but
Okay, so
not
that's
up to
not
20 years,
20. And I think if you look at the demographics,
below 20.
that's far older than 20. And it is the responsibility of elected representatives to listen to their community and act in a way that builds a town that our community is proud of and that is attractive to people who want to move here. That's our job. And so I respect the chamber's job, but you need to respect our job, which is to listen to people. It's why I support doing visioning. It's why, if you look, that report said this community has a lot of issues to talk through and work through about the type of housing and where and how fast and what price point. And it didn't get the job done.
Max, I simply want to say that I don't think you know the area median income figure as it relates to Wellesley and affects the housing here. You keep listing off a series of jobs that don't make anywhere near the AMI that would support their ability to apply for houses under inclusionary zoning. This is the flaw of the political position that the chamber keeps taking. And I don't understand it. Even if we do have build housing that is affordable based on the AMI, we're not going to be housing young firefighters, police officers, nurses' aides, baristas, the very people who are working in the stores along Central Street. That's why I'm saying that regionally, different communities can build different forms of housing that can accommodate different levels of income. And I'm not saying that I wish that were the case in Wellesley, but we can't control what's happened to the valuations in Wellesley and the fact that a median house value is approximately $1.8 million.
Thank you, Tom. We're going to move on from housing. Back to business attraction. Adjacent communities such as Natick, Needham, and Waltham have attracted large employers in recent years. For all candidates, what can Wellesley do to attract large employers into town? We're going to start with Mark on this one.
Well, for starters, I mean, the way I mean, I would argue that we don't really have the facilities to bring in large employers into our town, with the exception, I suppose, of the Sun Life complexes. But as we saw what happened there, they failed. I mean, the biotech, the life science project that was there didn't pan out. So I don't know if I would necessarily look at Wellesley as an engine for creating, businesses, large businesses that come in here. I think that those sites ought to be repurposed, specifically more in the housing realm than for bringing in large companies. So I don't know if I see a path, realistically, to be bringing in large employers into Wellesley. So
Beth, do you agree? Do not see a path to bring large employers into Wellesley?
So we are 10.2 square miles. We are very built out. As we discussed, I think your first question was about a dual tax rate. You look at the profile of Wellesley. We are a small business community. I can see us having more incubators and spawning more businesses. I can see us with more service businesses. If you look at what used to be up at the Wellesley Office Park, you had still small businesses, large landmass, but the types of businesses that make sense for this town are different than make sense in other towns. And I think we need to respect that. And so I don't really see us turning into an industrial complex.
Tom, not necessarily industrial complex, but do you think the town should be trying to attract large employers and can it?
Well, I don't think you're going to attract large employers unless you have a landing space for them. And I think my colleagues here on the call have expressed their concerns, which I agree with. I think whether it's the Harvard Pilgrim site, that's actually a very good example. When John Hancock was developing the Wellesley Office Park and building the Nines, we tried to interest them in possibly buying the Harvard Pilgrim building on the north side of Route 9 at that location. They declined because there are significant hazardous waste issues underneath the capped land there the Commonwealth is going to maintain ownership and they couldn't buy the property, so they didn't want to make the investment. We had a real estate development company come in that wanted to build life science facilities on both sides of Route 9. We know what happened to that industry, and those didn't go forward. So I just don't think that we do have the land area where we can build um, large facilities or attract large businesses. I do think that we can do a better job with the properties changing hands in Lower Falls about what we do with some of the office space down there. So I think it depends, of course, on what you mean by large, but I don't think that we're in a position to be competing with Natick in particular, for example, given their land area and given how commercialized a lot of their space is already.
Okay, we're gonna have one more question before we go into our final questions. Since we don't have a lot of time, keep it quick. And it has to do with Lower Falls. A lot of land there is changing over because the Haynes properties are changing over, and there's a sense of fear in the town about this change as these properties are somewhat of a boogeyman. Do you think Wellesley residents should be afraid of these properties changing over, or do you see it as an opportunity? Please try to keep your answers short. We're gonna start with Beth.
I don't think Wellesley residents are afraid or fear boogeymen. I think Wellesley residents are smart, intelligent people that know that 11 acres of land changing hands means change, and they want to make sure that we, as their elected officials, are paying attention, are putting in the rules and regulations to guide that development, and that we show the leadership to partner with any group that buys that land and talk about and be able to present in a cohesive way what the community needs, what the community struggles with in that area, and build something together with them. Not build it together, but frame it together and facilitate community input so that there is a success for the next generation of this town.
Mark?
Yeah, so as the chair of the planning board, I put forth and got my board to approve the funding of an area study for the Lower Falls. This is meant to be happening before we get into the comprehensive plan for that specific reason, Max, because this is an area that there is a lot of a neighborhood and town, concern. What we learned with the failed Rio projects, Article 17 and Article 16 a few years ago, is that this neighborhood is very active and they do have a lot of thoughts and concerns. And so my objective in doing that and pushing that forward is to engage that community, but the broader community as well, because it is the gateway to our town. And it is an opportunity for the town to reshape that gateway into an amazing, opportunity. But it can't happen if we're not engaged. And so engagement is the number one thing. There's traffic issues on Washington Street. We have a public housing building on River Street. We have a public parking lot on River Street. All of these things have to be integrated and intertwined to develop a
Thank
first
you.
class, project there. And it's going to happen with buy-in from the community, but we can't force it down anyone's throat.
Thanks, Mark. Tom?
Wellesley residents are fearful because they don't feel that we have a process that engages them and gives them an opportunity for education and input about potential development. We've seen this time and time again, where they worry that regardless of the rights of private developers to develop the property they own, they want an understanding about what might be proposed and what the impact might be. They want to be kept up to date. They want to know what kinds of opportunities they have to help shape development here in town. And I think that's why I keep going back to the comprehensive plan, for example. But we're finding with these new owners and there are various new owners in town that they are more aware of the need to communicate with the community at large, to engage them, and to provide an opportunity for greater education within the community about what the development might look like. So I think we have to do a better job of engaging the community, of listening to them, and of making sure, even more importantly, that they feel listened to.
Hey Max, I just want to follow up with something on that point because I came to the select board, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, with a proposal to have a development agreement as part of the Rio. And in a vote of 3-2, the select board didn't agree with that. That's what we need. We need the community engaged, and we need applicants, pushing that forward so that people know the certainty of things. And I find it interesting that we're talking about community engagement, and that's a point that was rejected 3-2.
Max, I'm sorry, but that Mr. Charney knows perfectly well that upon a memorandum from the executive director with a planning background and a letter from town council why the development agreement isn't necessary, effective, or viable in those circumstances. And what apparently the members of the planning board who were part of the Rio task force didn't seem to understand is the power they already have under special permitting. So the argument that was just put forward is simply incorrect and doesn't represent the facts.
So Max, I'm going to take
Go ahead.
exception to this. The vote, the 3-2 vote, was that the select board approve that they would support doing a development agreement and charge the planning board and the staff to come back with something that worked. And if something worked, would we support doing a development agreement? That was the issue. And 3 members of the board said they didn't want to do a development agreement and further expounded that it's a long, lengthy process, and this was not our role. So it's more than that specific process. It was a concept question so that planning board members and Rio task force members didn't waste their time coming up with other options if we as leaders were not going to engage on that. But I want to switch to something else, which
Sorry, Beth. I'm not sure we have time.
well, it's just a quick thing on your development direction. One of the things that we need to look at with these big developments is preserving some business space. Because if you can't have office space, you're really skewing the town in a direction where you can't start a business and work a service business or any other business in this town. So all our office space is in transition. We've got to carefully think about the impact of that for the town.
Thank you. Doesn't look like we have time for closing statements, but we do have time for if you could time travel to any one day in world history, just to observe, but not to change anything. Which day would you choose and why? Tom, I'm wondering what you got on this.
You know, it was actually a very interesting question, and there are multiple days that I would have chosen, but what I decided is the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and not perhaps for the reason you think. It's not solely because of how profound the document is in and of itself, but it's the process that we can learn from that led to the creation and signing of that document. It's the ability with strongly held different perspectives to be able to arrive through a collaborative process based on civil discourse, however vigorous, at a profound document like the Declaration itself. And so, even though people held very strongly different perspectives, we were able to arrive at a document that has withstood hundreds of years within the US.
Thank you. Beth?
So I'm going a little earlier than Tom, but not that different. I'm going to June 11th, 1776, when the Continental Congress selected 5 men to work together. They had a mix of lawyers, craftsmen or tradesmen, and scientists. And they came from different states, they came from different perspectives, they came with different philosophies, different attitudes, and they worked it out. And I think that is something we all need to do today. We need to be open-minded, we need to hear each other, and we need to get to some lasting solution that's just not a point in time. It's something that you can look back at 250 years later and say, how do we, a very eclectic and motivate a group of people get to a durable solution.
And Mark,
All right,
quickly.
thanks. So I'm not going to go back that far. I'm going to stay a little closer. I'm going back to November 9th, 1989. And that was the night that the Berlin Wall came down. And what's fascinating about that night is that it wasn't a dramatic military victory. It wasn't a single heroic speech. It was actually a bureaucratic misstatement. A government official saying new travel rules will take effect immediately. But the reason that small movement mattered is because the public was ready. The system had lost legitimacy, trust had eroded, and when that happens, even small cracks become turning points. What moves me about that night isn't the spectacle, it's the reminder that the system only endures when people believe in them, when institutions reflect the communities they serve. In a town like Wellesley, it matters. Local government isn't abstract. It's neighbors, it's schools, it's planning decisions, it's how we treat one another. Positive change doesn't come from tearing down. It comes from restoring trust, from listening, from building something that feels steady and fair. That's the kind of leadership moment I'd want to stand inside.
Thank you. And thank you all for participating in today's debate. We really appreciate it. Everyone, please vote if you have it next week, and good luck to you all.
Thank
And
you,
Greg, I
Matt.
would just say, I mean, Max, I would just say that anybody from the chamber who wants to reach out to me, they can go to my website. You can email me. I'm fully interested in hearing people's opinion on this stuff outside of this forum. This was a great forum to do it, but I think more engagement is needed. So please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk more about it.